This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
Scardetti and the extremist politicians only care about the medical records of those who access health care they disagree with.
doctors take aim at U.S. Attorney General Jonathan Scardetti for seeking transgender patient medical records from Vanderbilt Medical Center.
Our focus right now is on Vanderbilt's duty to its patients. It had a duty to let its patients know that this was going on and to protect that information, and they didn't do it.
Some of those transgender patients are now suing Vanderbilt for releasing the records.
I'm really hopeful that the state can come up with a better way to address the reality that we all want our students reading on grade level by the end of third grade.
A nonprofit prepares for an influx of students needing tutoring as a result of the third grade retention law.
Unclaimed prizes up to $18 million a year go to after-school programs.
Tennessee lottery winners who failed to claim their winnings are helping less fortunate students. More in our This Week cover story. And a conversation with former Nashville Banner reporter, entrepreneur, and CEO of the Power Poll, Bruce Doby, about the Nashville mayoral election. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of This Week. As students return to the classroom, tutoring needs have grown due to the third grade retention law. A battle at the border between the governor of Texas and the president. Unclaimed lottery money in Tennessee, it helps underserved students. But we begin with criticism of U.S. Attorney General Jonathan Scardetti for seeking transgender patient records. That seeking resulted in the lawsuit by those patients against Vanderbilt Medical Center.
That letter essentially asserts that Tennessee and other Republican states should have access to out-of-state reproductive health care records. That letter was also signed on by nearly 20 other Republican attorneys general. And today, some doctors condemned Scardetti, saying he should not be able to access records out of state, especially for such a polarizing reason like abortions. Scardetti's letter comes after another controversy where he was requesting records from Vanderbilt's transgender clinic. The doctors say he has no business in the doctor-patient relationship.
Coming from the party that is supposedly for small government and the privacy of its citizens, I see this for the hypocrisy that it is. Scardetti and the extremist politicians only care about the medical records of those who access health care they disagree with. Health care that is evidence-based and compassionate, but is now unavailable in the state of Tennessee.
Now, Scardetti's office maintains his issue is with the law, not the people the law affects. In a statement they wrote, in part, the Constitution gives states, not the federal government, the authority to regulate abortion. Now, some critics did have issue with that. For now in Nashville, Chris O'Brien, News 2.
Now, Vanderbilt University Medical Center is being sued after the hospital handed transgender patients' medical records to the state. The class action suit says VUMC failed its patients by sending some of their most private medical information to the Attorney General.
The 31-page complaint on the docket in state court says VUMC released some of the most intimate details of their private lives to the Attorney General and did not inform its affected patients. Attorney Tricia Hersfeld represents the plaintiffs.
Your health, your sexual partners, all those things can be things that can be discussed with doctors. And the fact that this information was given over to a government agency without any notice or attempt to make it anonymous is really desperately concerning to our clients.
Rewind to 2022. Attorney General Jonathan Scardetti launched a medical billing fraud investigation, which the AG's office says is directed solely at VUMC and related providers and not at patients or their families. But the lawsuit says that VUMC should have pushed back on the AG's request for personally identifiable information.
Our focus right now is on Vanderbilt's duty to its patients. It had a duty to let its patients know that this was going on and to protect that information, and they didn't do it.
VUMC writes, it is common for health systems to receive requests for patient records related to billing investigations and audits by government agencies. All health systems are obligated to comply with these requests in law enforcement investigations, and VUMC did so. But for Ray Holloman, chair of the Tennessee Transgender Task Force, VUMC's decision has had a chilling effect on the trans community.
We continue to see that Vanderbilt does not fight for transgender people. They are willing to just kind of roll over and do whatever the state says without any kind of consequence to our community. And so we don't feel like we can trust them at this point.
With the start of school imminent, the third grade retention law has many families thinking about what's in store for the next semester. Now, News 2's Maya Owen shows us how one nonprofit is preparing for an influx of students needing tutoring help.
I'm really hopeful that the state can come up with a better way to address the reality that we all want our students reading on grade level by the end of third grade.
Inside Learning Matters. The name speaks for itself.
We are a nonprofit tutoring center, and so we provide one-on-one instruction for any student that may be struggling academically. A large portion of what we do also, though, is academic assessment to determine if a student may have a learning disability.
But this summer has been unlike any other.
We, at that point, had an influx of families that were looking for academic assessment because an exemption to that retention law was the existence of a learning disability. So a lot of those families, when they got news that their student was either below expectations or approaching expectations, wanted to know whether that deficit would rise to the level of a learning disability.
The third grade retention law had schools and tutors making adjustments and preparing for an influx. The statewide results showed 60% of third graders were at risk of retention, but then over 80% of children who appealed their scores were successful.
Some of our families tried to appeal, saying we're already providing this outside intervention to our students, and so maybe they don't need to go into that summer program. So that was a part of the appeal process for some of our families. We did pick up some students, though, whose families just said, I don't know that really the summer program is going to solve the issue.
Now with the start of school just weeks away, Christy Anderson says they're preparing for another wave of students.
After the first progress reports come out every year, our phone starts ringing off the hook. And so that's not uncommon. But this year, I'm sure those second and third grade parents are really going to be looking at those benchmark scores a lot more closely.
Maya Owens, News 2.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott is doubling down on his plan to leave large floating buoys in the Rio Grande River to deter migrants, despite warnings from the Justice Department that the devices violate federal law. The DOJ ordered Abbott to remove them. Here's ABC's Melissa Adon.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott is refusing to comply with an order by the Department of Justice to remove floating buoys he installed in the Rio Grande River. The DOJ gave Abbott a Monday deadline of 2 p.m. Eastern to announce his plans to comply with the order to remove the barricades intended to discourage unlawful migration at the southern border, or Texas would be sued in federal court. The Justice Department says Texas had not received federal authorization to construct the buoys that it says present serious risk to the environment, navigation, and public safety, and violate a number of laws. This Texas property owner says the state asked to put up barbed wire on his property, but he refused, fearing it could harm migrants.
They're going to cross, they're going to find a way.
In a letter to President Biden, Abbott said the Constitution grants Texas the sovereign authority to protect its borders, adding that he will see you in court, Mr. President.
Governor Abbott has money in his budget, and he's using it as a state emergency to put these buoys in. But legally, he's not really allowed to do that.
Meantime, the Texas Department of Public Safety Inspector General is looking into allegations of inhumane treatment after a state trooper wrote a letter alleging orders were given to push migrants, including children, back into the river and refuse them water amid the record-setting heat. Texas DPS claims the trooper misinterpreted the order.
If a member from one of our leadership or a supervisor tells a trooper to push back migrants, what that means is to verbally tell them, go to a port of entry.
Melissa Adon, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Now to our This Week cover story. Hard to imagine some lottery winners don't claim the money. that they won. Well, the tickets sometimes get lost or unchecked for a variety of reasons. The money doesn't get claimed. So what happens to it? State Capitol reporter Chris O'Brien explains what happens to those dead winnings.
Brittany Taylor is a trainer and coach at Moves and Grooves, an after-school LEAP program.
LEAPS is actually our grantor, so they allow us to be able to offer free after-school programming for middle school students with transportation, snacks, academic support, and also we provide a dance enrichment for the students as well.
LEAP stands for Lottery for Education After-School Programs, and they require at least 50% of their students to be disadvantaged, whether socially, economically, or educationally.
I think it's taught me more about myself and also just more about the community, to understand that you're a person and you're a piece of the equation, but to see how the community grows and comes together and how we support each other, it's been amazing over the years.
It may sound strange, but LEAP shares an important relationship with the Tennessee Lottery.
Unclaimed prizes up to $18 million a year go to after-school programs. The program's run by an organization called LEAP.
Under state law, 100% of monies constituting an unclaimed prize go to LEAP programs. Last year, the lottery helped fund 227 of them.
We cap out at $18 million every year, and what's ever unclaimed above the $18 million goes back into the Lottery for Education accounts,
which funds things like Tennessee Promise and Tennessee Reconnect.
There are very few things that can change a person's life, other than maybe winning $2 billion in a lottery. But really, education is the one thing that really can change your life, and it's the foundation of everything you're going to do for the rest of your life.
It may sound dramatic, but without the funding, Moves and Grooves might not exist.
I mean, it's huge. To be honest, without this funding, we would not be able to offer the quality after-school program that we do offer.
Taylor actually didn't know the funding came from unclaimed tickets, but when she found out, she jokingly had one final message.
Don't claim your tickets.
Yeah, exactly. In Nashville, Chris O'Brien.
Stay with us. This week continues in a moment, and a conversation about the Nashville mayor's race with PowerPole CEO Bruce Doby.